This is my mug. I use this at home all the time, but I don't use it for coffee. Now, that might seem strange because coffee is consumed so much all around the world, and especially as one that's lived in the Pacific Northwest for several years, which is, I would say, one of the capitals of coffee in North America. It's kind of strange why I don't. And in this video, I want to talk about why I don't drink coffee and get into some more of the reasons, the very personal reasons that have led me to the way that I live and I believe. So let's get started. I am Dr. Michael Smith. I am a naturopathic doctor, and I've loved making these videos. This is the first one I made actually for a while. Been kind of on a hiatus as I've gotten settled in a fairly new practice in practicing here in Missoula, Montana. And throughout this journey, I've shared a lot about health. I've shared a lot about some things I've learned through my family, through my practice, things that I think are helpful for individuals watching these videos. But the one thing I really haven't talked about much are my personal religious beliefs. And they really shape who I am. I really can't tease out what I do and who I am as far as religion and faith and thinking about naturopathic medicine and science and my family and all these things. They're all connected and I can't tease them out. And thus far, I really haven't shared a lot about them. But in this video, I want to share a little bit more about what I believe and how that shapes how I live and how I practice naturopathic medicine. So, fundamentally, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And as such, I believe and follow Jesus Christ and the teachings that he has made through living prophets on the earth. Just like Abraham and Moses and Isaiah in the Bible, there are living prophets today that have given us instructions from God for our benefit. And I know that as I followed those instructions, those commandments, my life has been blessed. And I want to talk about one of those commandments today called the Word of Wisdom. As members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we follow this commandment that pertains to our dietary health, how we take care of our bodies. And this really resonates with me as a naturopathic doctor because I am doing that all the time in helping patients improve their health and live as healthy as possible. And the Word of Wisdom goes back to 1833. The leader of the church, Joseph Smith, was in a school of other church leaders. They were teaching each other, they were learning, and it was in the upper room of a store in a place called Kirtland, Ohio. And during this time, they would go and they learn. And this is the time in the American history when smoking tobacco was very popular. And but that led to tobacco spit and so forth on the floor. And Joseph Smith's wife Emma and some other help were hired or helping clean up this schoolroom for these church leaders. And if you don't know anything about tobacco, it stings pretty significantly. It's not something that goes away. And so that kind of prompted Joseph Smith to ask God, just like he had before, just like we can all do, is seeking what God would have him know, and all of us subsequently, about how to take care of our health. Is tobacco a good thing that we should put into our bodies? And what came was a revelation found in the Doctrine and Covenants, which is a collection of revelations that Joseph Smith had received. And this was all about how to take care of our bodies, what things we should and things we shouldn't put into our bodies so that we can stay as healthy as possible. So I'm going to go through this section. There are 21 verses of scripture, and I'm going to talk about it and share some insights from me being both a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and also as a physician who regularly helps patients understand the foundations of health, what they can do on a foundational, fundamental level to improve their health and well-being in small and simple ways. So it starts out, a word of wisdom for the benefit of the Council of High Priests assembled in Kirtland, Ohio, and the church, and to the saints of Zion. I really like the idea of this being a word of wisdom. We talk about what's wisdom. It's being able to use knowledge and for in really specific ways. As we take care of our bodies, our brains, our minds are able to think better. The connection between our brains, our mind, our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health is very much connected, and is also connected to our spiritual health as well. I think it's interesting that it's called a word of wisdom. We look in the scriptures in the Bible, in the beginning of John chapter 1, Jesus calls him, it's written that Jesus is referred to as the Word. As we follow the word of wisdom, I believe we are truly following Jesus Christ and allowing ourselves to more completely be his disciples, to his saints, as it's saying here. It says, to be sent greeting, not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation in the word of wisdom, showing forth the order and will of God in the temporal salvation of all saints in the last days. These are the last days, and these are instructions that God is giving to his people and really to the whole world so that we can find temporal salvation. So many people I meet as a doctor are either are wanting to improve their health, and they might be starting at the bottom, going from like bad to good, and overcoming really significant symptoms that they're experiencing in life. Sometimes they might be going, and then there's others that are going from good and they want to go better. They want to improve their health. And regardless of where someone is at on this continuum of bad to good to better, these principles of the word of wisdom apply, and they apply really amazingly. It says, given for a principle with promise. This is verse 3 of section 89 in the Doctrine and Covenants, adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints who are or can be called saints. I really like how the idea of principle with promise. When we follow these principles, these guidelines, based on gospel truths, there are promises attached to them. And I want to jump to that right now, to the very end, where it does give those promises. If we do these things that we're going to dive into, what are the promised blessings? Verse 18, and all saints, and I would say all individuals, who remember to keep and do these sayings, walking in obedience to the commandments, shall receive health in their navel and marrow in their bones, shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, even hidden treasures. It's interesting, it comes back to that connection with the mind and the body. We really need to fuel the body so that our mind can work well. It's interesting, there's so much research out now about the connection between the mind and the gut. The gut-brain connection. This relates to inflammation. This relates to the microbiome. So many other factors. And it's really interesting. It talks about what we're putting into our bodies, really into our gut, our GI system, that affects our minds and our ability to think, to access knowledge and wisdom. And shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint. And I, the Lord, give unto them a promise, that the destroying angel shall pass by them and the children of Israel and not slay them. That's referring, of course, to the Exodus when they were leaving Egypt, and fleeing to the Red Sea and eventually to the Sinai Peninsula, then eventually, after some time, to Israel. And the Passover is all about the destroying angel passing by their houses and not killing the firstborn child. The same promise is given to us here. If we're doing these things, it's as if we are figuratively putting that lamb's blood over our lives, protecting us from the destroying angel. That just the blood of the lamb representing Jesus Christ, connecting with the word. It's all symbolic. It all falls together. So that's the promise. We're going to be blessed. Salvation, we often think of in a spiritual sense. I think there's salvation in a physical sense. We're free. Salvation means, it refers in some part to freedom. Being able to live the way we want to and act and behave. I think there's really great power in that. I want to talk about what are these things that we're commanded to not do, and then what are we commanded to do? Verse 4, Behold, verily thus saith the Lord unto you, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation. So here we go. That inasmuch as any man drinketh wine or strong drink among you, behold, it is not good, neither meet in the sight of your God, Father, only in assembling yourselves together, offering up your sacraments before him. And behold, this should be wine, yea, wine of the grape of the vine of your own make. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. What is this referring to? We're talking about strong drinks, which is understood to be alcohol, coffee. Coffee we'll get to in a minute. We will be right back. But strong drinks, really alcohol is the main idea here. But really, I think the principle boils down to the last verse. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. It's interesting. I have some in my clinic room here, some isopropyl alcohol that I use for cleaning wounds. It's a disinfectant. It's clean. It's intended for killing bacteria that might be on the skin. If we're doing a minor surgery or cleaning up after a wound or something like that, that's what it's really good for. You don't want to drink isopropyl alcohol. Any alcohol that is drunk is more ethanol based. So strong drinks are really not for the belly. I've really thought about this, and this really relates to herbal medicine. In herbal medicine, there's so many different formats of how we can use herbs. A few examples. I have one of my colleagues here picks some of these wildflowers, and in the back there's some lovely sage, and it has this lovely soft feeling, kind of like a lamb's ear in a way. But if you rub it together, it smells amazing. Sage is used as a carminative to calm the stomach. It's used as an astringent to tighten up blood vessels. Helps with hot flashes, with night sweats. It can be used for diarrhea, gas, burping. Interestingly, can also dry up milk. So for anyone who's lactating or breastfeeding, may not be the best idea. And with all of these, of course, if you're wanting to think about using them, consult your favorite naturopathic doctor before you dive in, because some of these can backfire. So sage, we can use this for cooking. You can use this fresh. You can make a tea out of it. Probably not this one. As far as teas go, there are different forms. This is a blend. It's called an alternative tea. It's a bunch of herbs that are really great for the liver, improving liver health. So there's you can find it in a bulk tea. There's also the commonly used tea bags. This is throat coat, one of my more favorite ones. I love licorice in a tea. Not everyone does, but I really do. And there's lots of ways of consuming it. If we're doing a tea, you're basically putting that tea in water, and that water is helping pull out those nutrients from the plant matter, the dried leaves in this case. And water is used as what's called the menstruum. That's the fancy word for the thing, the liquid, that's pulling things out of the plant. There's lots of different menstruums that are available. Alcohol being one of them. Glycerin being another. Vinegar, apple cider vinegar can be used. Honey can be used as a menstruum. If you think about garlic, honey being an example, honey is pulling the great, amazing things out of the garlic in a very healing way. A few examples. This is a big bottle of a tincture of fennel. Fennel is also used as a carminative, really to help calm the stomach. Great for colic with babies. It has a very aromatic scent to it. I really like fennel. Fennel's great. This is a tincture. There is, if you look on the ingredients, there's alcohol, water, and a little bit of vegetable glycerin. But this is primarily a tincture because it is alcohol-based. And really, a tincture refers to alcohol. It is possible, and I love using glycerites. This is a glycerite of lemon balm. Lemon balm is a lovely plant that's really good for calming the nervous system. And this is made with glycerin. Glycerin, it makes it kind of a sweet flavor. It doesn't have alcohol in it. So for somebody who is sensitive to alcohol, a glycerin might be better than a tincture. But as I've gone through school, I've really kind of wrestled with this idea of school and also my practice, wrestling with the idea of, is alcohol appropriate even in a tincture format? Because I obviously want to keep the word of wisdom, but I don't want to consume alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. Going to a bar, going to a fancy event, I do not order alcoholic beverages because of the word of wisdom. It said strong drinks are not for the belly. I don't drink alcohol. But in the case of this, what are the thoughts behind a tincture? And if we're thinking a tincture versus a tea, alcohol draws out different phytonutrients than a water does. So in some ways, we need alcohol in order to be effective. One tincture, in some ways, you might think about is pure vanilla. Putting vanilla beans in alcohol, and the alcohol pulls out that vanilla flavor. Then you use it for baking, and the alcohol evaporates, at least theoretically, in the baking process. I've really wrestled with this. Is alcohol tinctures appropriate for the word of wisdom? And the purpose of me talking about this is really just to share my personal opinion on it. The way that we keep the commandments, I believe, is personal, and I want you to come to your own conclusion. I think about what is the purpose. I think that we can always go back to what the purpose is. When we're drinking alcohol for the sake of alcohol, whether it's a beer, wine, a martini, vodka, whatever the alcoholic beverage is, I think the purpose is to fill the belly, sorry. It goes into the stomach, it goes into the bloodstream. It's to help calm and relaxing. It's a social experience. It's been around for a long time. Alcohol is not new. But the purpose is for the belly. And Joseph Smith, through this revelation, is clarifying that alcohol is not for the belly. It's for cleaning the body. And when I'm taking a tincture for the purposes of healing, I feel like there's a different purpose there. So, in my view, alcoholic tinctures, I sometimes will mix with the glycerites, makes it taste good. I feel like they're okay, but I also believe that everyone has their own opportunity to make that decision for themselves, if it's appropriate or not. Granted, when I take this, it's very small amounts compared to a larger consumption of alcohol consumed in a beverage format. President Nelson, a while back, shared the idea of keeping the Sabbath day holy. And really it changed when he stopped looking at the do's and the don'ts and started thinking about the principle, the sign that he is showing God by doing that. And really that's where the heart is at. Where's our heart in this whole process? And I believe that if we are seeking healing through the plants and the plants that God has given to us, I believe that it is appropriate. I think it's really interesting talk on the idea of herbal medicine, that we can go back even to the people in the Book of Mormon. In the ancient Americas, there's a record of people that used plants. It says in Alma 46, verse 40, kind of mentioned in the middle of context of a lot of wars. There was a lot of conflict, a lot of people dying because of these battles that were going on. And there were some who died with fevers, this the verse says, which at some seasons of the year were very frequent in the land. But not so much with fevers. People didn't die as much with fevers, because of the excellent qualities of the many plants and roots which God had prepared to remove the cause of disease, or to which men were subject by the nature of the climate. I love the idea that God prepares plants, whether it's sage or beautiful flowers, here, whether it's plants that we can use in a tincture format or tea or whatever, used with judiciousness and skill to really help heal our bodies. I use herbal medicine almost every day. I love it. And I love the abilities that God has given to us to find healing through plants. We talked about strong drinks, and again, tobacco is not for the body, neither for the belly, and is not good for man, but is an herb for bruises and all sick cattle, to be used with judgment and skill. This is referring to the smoking of tobacco, chew tobacco, not the topical use. I was looking into this a little bit more. Interestingly, when we smoke, it actually opens up blood vessels. And that's really counterintuitive for bruises. So if we're using it for bruises, it would be used topically. It's not something I hear a lot of. I was reading one study that shows that there wasn't much use of tobacco in a poultice format. When you take up the leaves, crush it up like a little paste and put it on the skin on a bruise, compared to other forms of healing. That study wasn't very conclusive either way, but it's interesting that people have studied that to see if a tobacco poultice had been used. I'm sure there's other studies, but that's the one that I found. There are other plants that are good, that can help with bruises and other things like that. Tobacco, we know that of the things that are difficult that tobacco can cause, lung cancer being one of the number one things. If we smoke tobacco, either with first-hand exposure, second or third-hand exposure can also be a thing that can cause challenges in our bodies, in our lungs. And so that's something that we need to be aware of, to realize that tobacco can cause lots of harm. Science has, I think, caught up with this revelation given in 1833. We now know so much about what tobacco does to the body. We know the effects of alcohol, how alcohol affects the brain, how it impairs decision making, drunk driving, bad decisions made under the influence. And I think this is really intended for protection, as we talked about salvation, wanting God giving us the instructions on how to take care of our body so that we can prevent sickness and other problems in our lives. Again, and again, verse 9, hot drinks are not for the body or the belly. So it says the things that we're supposed to avoid: alcohol, tobacco, coffee, and tea, which are clumped into the hot drinks category. That's why I don't drink coffee. It's considered a hot drink. Now, Michael, Dr. Smith, you just talked about herbal tea. But why? What's the difference between tea and herbal tea? Now, it's really interesting. I had the chance to go to a tea factory several years ago and got to see how they made tea bags just like this. It's a very fascinating process. On a side note, one of my favorite rooms was the room where they keep peppermint. They have a whole room for peppermint because if the peppermint is kept next with other herbs used in the tea, then it can bleed over and the other tea starts smelling like peppermint. It's this very aromatic experience. I loved it. But it was through that experience that I learned, especially, and also since then as well, of differences in language of what is defined as tea versus what is defined as like an herbal tea. This is also referred to as a tisane, Teasane, tisane. So there's tea, which really refers to the Camellia sinensis plant. It's the tea plant. And we get all the different types of tea from it: the green tea, the black tea, the white tea, the gray tea. All of those teas come from this plant. Now, what the difference is really is how they are prepared. And some are cut off very early on in the life cycle when the leaves are very small and fresh. Some when the tea is grown out. If it's fermented, if it's cut and then fermented, that creates other types. I believe that's the black tea. The green tea is just the pure herbs. And green tea, tea is used is very important in so many cultures. I had the chance when I was in school to go on a retreat for qigong, which is a form of think about tai chi. The same type of an idea. I was doing some Chinese medicine classes as part of my naturopathic medicine program. It was a very enlightening experience, and I had the chance to watch and observe a tea ceremony, a Chinese tea ceremony that used green tea, these fairly fine teas. And it was a very fascinating experience to watch. I developed a great respect for the traditions that are surrounding that. I didn't drink any. They passed around the tea. I just let it keep going by me, and so I was able just to watch and participate, but not drink any of the green tea. When we refer to tea, it's referring to the Camellia sinensis plant or coffee, and not to the herbal teas. The same action of water pulling out the phytonutrients from that applies. Can green tea be used medicinally? Yes, it has amazing properties. One of them being used to fight viruses. I've used it recently as a supplement, recommending it to patients to help fight viruses as part of a very rigorous treatment plan. But I think about what is the principle behind all of this. Going back to the principle with a promise, what are the principles? The principle, I believe, of coffee and tea, not this tea, but the other tea, is the addiction, the dependence on that. I think it's easy to see how people who drink these beverages often want more of them, and they become in a way dependent on it to help get them going, give them that buzz. I talk about coffee frequently with patients, but it can have its side effects. Not everyone can tolerate coffee, and the reason that I personally don't drink coffee is because I believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that he received the revelations in the Doctrine and Covenants that are given for a benefit. And as I've put these things to the test, literally just trying it out and seeing if it works, I have noticed that difference for me. By avoiding these things, I have felt blessed. I have felt an increase in wisdom and knowledge and being able to run and not be weary, not faint, walk and not faint. That's why I don't drink coffee. It's not necessarily because of that it's a commandment and it's given by a rule of law in a way in a religious context. It's because for me, I know personally that it's from God. I know that Joseph Smith received that from God, and that these instructions, when followed, have blessed my life. That's why. And if you drink coffee and you enjoy it, I respect that. I really do. But I believe that there are even higher benefits from following the word of wisdom as we have it. We talked about coffee and caffeine with tea being addictive. I also want to talk about sugar. Sugar is and can be addicting. It's interesting. I was doing some research a while back that showed that sugar is just as or more addicting than cocaine. Let me say that again. Sugar is as much as or more addicting than cocaine. Cocaine is a powerfully addictive drug. Sugar is just as addictive. Why? It's affecting this brain, part of our brain called the ventral tegmental area. It's in the middle of our brain. It's attached to that reward system, that dopamine, wanting that pleasure kind of in a way. And when we eat sugar, our body wants more of it. And it's this, I don't know if you've noticed that, but I haven't, and I've seen it with my kids. If they get sugar, they want more, and they want more, and they want more. And it's really hard to stop because our body likes that sugar. It gives us some serotonin, that feel-good hormone. It helps with, if we get it all of a sudden, then there's the dopamine associated with it as well. Sugar is addicting. And I feel like that's the principle, is that when we avoid these things overall, we avoid things that are addictive to our body, that are causing us to depend on other things to keep us going. Do we need sugar? Yes. Do we need to eat processed sugar? Not as much. Our bodies are wonderfully designed to manage sugar. If you want a really good book that talks about that, I recommend this book, Glucose Revolution by Jessie Inchauspé. She's a French biochemist that has talked a lot about sugar and what our body does with sugar. This is an amazing book at a very patient-friendly level, which is why I like it. I recommend it to my patients. It talks about how our body is able to manage sugar. We don't necessarily need extra sugar. But if we do, there's things that we can do, as she talks about, to minimize the effect that it has on our body. I made a whole other video about sugar, the sugar conundrum, and how we can manage that with ourselves and in our home. I invite you to go check that out. I'll put the link in the description below for that. So it's interesting, in Latter-day Saint culture, there's a lot of sugar. It's not, you go to Utah, Idaho, where there's a lot of members of the church live, where I grew up, where I've lived. You see cookie places, you see the dirty soda places, you see the dessert places. There's a lot of sugar. And is that necessarily a good thing? I don't kind of think it is. There's some history behind that, the Utah-Idaho Sugar Company, and how that was an industry. Sugar beets was an industry in Utah at a time, and I think there was some cultural and perhaps church support of that sugar industry to help with the economy. This is, 100 years ago, or so. But it's led to what I think is this over obsession of sugar. I am in a soapbox, if you couldn't tell. I feel like as members of the church, we honestly have more sugar than we need. My kids come home from church having sugar from different classes and teachers and just wonderful people who bring treats for their classes. Is it needed? I don't think so. Does it help everyone feel happy? Of course. That's why we do it. But it's an invitation to think about with sugar as part of the word of wisdom. It's not mentioned specifically, but neither is eating too many carrots or eating too many avocados. Like, if a little bit of those is fine. If all we ate was carrots, would that be a bad thing? Yeah. And so it's just this principle. What's going on in our bodies? At this point, the instructions shift a little bit. It shifts to talk about the things that we should eat. We should consume for our bodies. And as we do, I want to maybe bridge that with something that isn't necessarily formally part of the word of wisdom, but does relate to coffee. And that's sleep. And sleep is important. Sleep is symbolic of figuratively dying and then waking up the next day, rising, being born again, a new day and a fresh start. There's some practical things about sleep. We need sleep. During our sleep, synapses in our brain strengthen their connections. Unneeded memories and things are consolidated and cleaned out. The immune system in our brain, the glia cells, they're active. They're doing their custodial work, so to speak, cleaning out garbage and debris from our brain. We need sleep to function. And I think God knew that, because in this section right before, in section 88 of the Doctrine and Covenants, section 124, it says, "Cease to be idle, cease to be unclean, cease to find fault one with another, cease to sleep longer than is needful. Retire to thy bed early, that ye may not be weary. Arise early, that your bodies and your minds might be invigorated." I love that word, invigorated. Invigorated is an invigorating word. And it comes with sleep. I have found that when I get enough sleep, when I go to bed early, when I wake up early, and by early I'm meaning 6:30 maybe, or earlier, if I can do it. I love to wake up early. I don't need coffee. I don't need it. I don't need it to give me that morning buzz to wake up my brain, because I'm focusing on sleep. This is not a verse that's formally part of the word of wisdom, but in my mind it's part of it. It's connected. It's literally on the same spread of pages. And so I believe that as we follow the instructions for sleep, going to bed early and waking up early, we are really taking care of our body the way God intended. Was it Benjamin Franklin or that said, maybe I'm attributing it to him in my mind, "The early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." It's the saying. It's part of the cultural vernacular in a way, but yet there's scriptural backing it up. If we go to sleep early, we wake up early, our bodies are going to be feeling better. Now, what's the best time to go to sleep? I think being asleep by about 11 p.m. is optimal. It allows our brain to start processing and relaxing and things like that. If we stay up too late, then we catch a second wind. Our brain gets going with ideas and thoughts, at least mine does, and we're not able to shut down. It's a little harder to shut down our brain, its programming. And so one of the reasons why I don't drink coffee, because I don't feel like it's necessary if I'm getting enough sleep. If I'm fueling my body with good food, we'll get there in a minute, and if I'm taking care of myself the best I can with exercise and movement, and so forth. Okay, let's shift over to now what is good for our body. And again, verily I say unto you, all wholesome herbs God hath ordained for the constitution, nature, and use of man. We're supposed to use herbs. We're supposed to use plants. They're given for our benefit, as we talked about. Whether they be herbal tea, whether they're plants, your salads as part of your meal, your vegetables, your fruits, we need those. Every herb in the season thereof, every fruit in the season to be used with prudence and thanksgiving. Yea, flesh also, the beast and the fowls of the air, I the Lord have ordained for the use of man with thanksgiving. Nevertheless, they are to be used sparingly. And then it is pleasing unto me that they should not be used only in times of winter or of cold or famine. We're supposed to eat meat. There were some questions in the early history of the church when is meat part of our diet? Is meat good for us? And there was another revelation, I believe it was section 45, where it talks about, yes, meat is good, but we need to use it with skill, with being conscious of how we're using it. Meat is a great source of protein. It's a great source of iron, red meat specifically. There's a lot of benefits that come from meat, and God is giving us some framework of how we should do that. We use it. It should be used in times of winter or cold. Interestingly, I see a lot. I almost find it's used more in summer with barbecues. It's great. I love it. It tastes good. It's filling. It helps us with protein, and for some people, protein is really needed and important. We all need protein, but there are some people who really need protein. So meat is a really good source for that. So as I work with patients, sometimes I'm like, maybe you want to cut back on your meat because your cholesterol is ticking upward a little bit. Other times I'm like, work on maybe try the Mediterranean diet that limits red meat and increase poultry and fish with the low inflammatory foods to minimize the risks of heart disease and high cholesterol and things like that. So I do often talk about that. The last section is really talking about grain. All grain is ordained for the use of man and of beasts and to the staff of life. How often do we think about bread or one of its many forms? Almost every culture has a form of bread. Whether it's a tortilla, whether it's a loaf of bread, whether it's noodles or pasta or whatever it might be, rice in some cuisines, grains are important for us. We need we do need carbohydrates. Carbohydrates found in grains provide energy. All grain is good for the food of man, as also the fruit of the vine, that which yieldeth fruit, whether in the ground or above the ground. I really think that grain is supposed to be used. I think it's amazing. If we have too many carbohydrates, can it lead to issues with, say, blood sugar dysregulation? Yes. So I'm mindful of that when I talk to patients about managing blood sugar. Sometimes I'll recommend maybe a continuous glucose monitor. Some people use these they need to use these to manage their blood sugar and their insulin. Other times I just recommend it just as a way of interestingly checking out what your blood sugar is and how does your body react to sugar when you eat. It's interesting, and I still need to think on this some more. Wheat says for man, corn for the ox, oats for the horse, rye for the fowls. Can we eat all of those things? Yes. And there's the ideas of wheat, ancient grains, how the things have changed with cultivation over the past several thousand years, how the wheat eat now is different than the wheat that was eaten a long time ago, gluten content, things like that. Grains are important. Fruits and vegetables are important. Meat is important. Avoiding things that are addictive is important, because those things, all of these things put together, help us increase our freedom. If we are keeping the word of wisdom by watching what we put into our body, if we're watching our sleep, if we're moving our bodies, which affects the sleep, which affects our diet, all these three things go together, we're setting ourselves up for the best success possible with our health. And I really believe that's what God intended. I believe that we are children of God. First and foremost and fundamentally, I believe that God created us. He created our bodies. And we are created in His likeness and image. And because He created us, He gave us a handbook of how to take care of our bodies. It's the scriptures. It's the word of God that is directing us on how we can take care of ourselves to live as happy and healthy as prosperously, that's a word, as possible. I think about, this is not the full thing, but these are the user manuals for my car, at least some of them. If a car manufacturer thinks it is important to include instructions on how to take care of a car, how much more important is it for God to give us instructions in the scriptures on how to take care of our bodies? That's what the word of wisdom is. And all saints who remember to keep and do these things, walking in obedience to the commandments, shall receive health in their navel and marrow in their bones, shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge, even hidden treasures. And they shall run and not be weary, and shall walk and not faint, and the destroying angel shall pass over them. During my training, I had the chance to work with a patient, and he was young 20s, I would say, recently released from prison, released from incarceration. He was at a point where he was rebuilding his life. I was able to work in a clinic that served this patient population, and during I met with him twice. The first one, he's like, I want to learn how to eat better, how to take care of myself. I want to go to the gym. I want to work out. I want to feel better and take care of myself. So I went through many of the things that we talked about here. I showed them. I talked about the food pyramid, basically. This is the Harvard version, which I like better than the USDA MyPlate version. That's a whole other video, that topic for another video. If you're interested, let me know. I'll make it. I went through the basics of nutrition. I gave him some recipes to try, things to start working on. I saw him, I think, the next week. And he says, I did everything you said, and it works. I feel better. I have more energy. I'm able to live and function the way that I want to. Principles of nutrition, principles of the word of wisdom, in my mind, they're all the same. If we follow the principles, we reap the benefits. They're the benefits of following of good balanced nutrition. There's benefits of following the commandments of God, and when you combine them, there's this synergy that I love to live in. The word of wisdom has defined who I am and how I live. And I believe that if more people kept the word of wisdom, we would see an overall healthier people across the world. Doesn't matter if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not. I believe there's benefits to be had. And that's the way I live it. That's the way I practice. That's why I don't drink coffee. That's how I use plants. for healing. That's how I use food as medicine. It's all tied together in my mind, and that's why I'm making this video. To help you understand how I function as a Latter-day Saint who is also a naturopathic doctor. I hope this has been helpful. If it is, or if you have any questions, comment down below. What questions do you have? What insights have you gained? Let me know. I'd love to continue this conversation. If there's something that you'd like me to do a video about, let me know. I've been on a hiatus for a while, but I want to do more, and I'm planning some more videos soon. Let me know what would be interesting and what experiences you've had living the word of wisdom or principles similarly. By avoiding this, by trying this, by not doning, how does it work for you? Let me know. I'm excited to continue this conversation. And as I always say, as we follow in the end of videos, as you follow the word of wisdom, and throughout your day, be well. Have an awesome day. Thanks for joining.